Welcome to Top Advisor Marketing, where you will learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your practice. Brought to you by Top Advisor Podcasting, a done-for-you podcasting solution built just for trusted advisors. And now, your co-hosts of Top Advisor Marketing, Kirk Lowe and Matt Halloran.
Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing podcast. Today, Kirk and I are going to get a little personal here with everybody and talk about our resilience and how to find your resilience and how we have maintained this resilience, not just since we partnered, a couple of years ago, but both of us have been fiercely entrepreneurial for a long time. So, ready, Kirk? You ready to dive into this?
I'm ready.
All right.
I took your instruction. I stepped a couple inches back from my microphone, so I'm not overmodulating.
Nice. We had
to redo this take.
Well, and you're also standing, which is another one of our best practices, and it's really important for us to do these finer point things to make sure that the audio quality is good.
I really wish I had somebody in the room in my office here who did take two.
We just did that virtually today. Well, Would you mind starting off with the operational definition of what resilience is?
Yes, this definition is brought to you by the American Psychological Association. We did not get any money for that.
No, we didn't.
But we appreciate them putting the definition on their website. Resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. We can all relate to the last one mostly. Mm-hmm. Such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, workplace and financial stressors. It means bouncing back from difficult experiences.
Well, where did you get this from? Let's start with you. How did you find your resilience growing up throughout, the 40 plus years you've been on this planet?
Well, it's not from having a hard life, I don't think. I mean, everybody in our own right, but I had an incredible childhood. Doesn't mean my family didn't go through stuff, but I think I was always a really grateful kid. And I grew up in a smallish town, decent schools, tons of friends, lived on the lake, had a lot of freedoms, played a lot of sports. I know I wasn't expecting to go there in this podcast, but whatever. But in my youth, I think sports. My mom was really resourceful and did a lot of stuff. She was a tireless worker, like in the community. She was a school teacher. She had 4 kids. I was the oldest. I think being the oldest probably is part of my resilience too, to be honest. I was not only the oldest kid in my house, but I was the oldest cousin. So each of my parents were the oldest, so it kind of made sense in their families. My mom had 8. There were 8 in her family and 4 in my dad. So there was a lot of cousins, and I was always the oldest of those as well. So I always had a lot of leadership opportunities in my household. I needed to pay for my own university. My parents had a lot of other obligations. And back then, it wasn't quite as big a deal about, saving for your kids' college. I don't know how many, my generation, I was born in 1969. I suspect there were lots of people who were in my shoes. So I had to, couldn't find the kind of job that could pay enough, in my opinion, for the work I wanted to do. So I started my own businesses, and then I worked in bars to get through that. And then in sports, I was around some really crazy good coaches. I used to do competitive kayaking and canoeing, which was an amazing sport because for some reason in my childhood, in this very small community on a lake, we had 6 national team coaches who passed through our community and coached us. It was incredible. I don't understand the odds of that. It was very strange. Met a number of Olympians over the years that had won medals for Canada, which was really cool as a kid. And I think that really helped me build a work ethic, which is part of resilience. For me, I think it's a big part of it. And so as a kid, those were some really big ones for me. How about you?
So we grew up very, very, very poor, and very mobile. And so I think that I wasn't the most grateful child, just because I don't feel like I had a lot to be grateful for besides, not even having basic needs met. But that really all changed when I went into the Navy. And that's really where I found my resilience. because it was the first time in my life where success was accessible, right? When you grow up very, very poor, you have things kind of stacked against you. And when I got into the military, there was nothing stacked against me. It was the harder I worked, the harder I studied, the volunteering for opportunities just really opened up a bunch of doors. And it also helped me learn how my brain worked. I think my biggest way of maintaining resilience is truly understanding who I am and how I work. I didn't learn any of that until I was thrust into situations where I really had to know myself. And, when you're 18 years old, you just turn 18 and you're in a war on a big ammunition ship that's a huge bomb and you're floating around in a war zone, really kind of makes you think about life a little differently and mortality and, impermanence and all of those sorts of things. And then I always looked at failing forward. And I don't know who told me that early on in my professional career. And it was probably in the service. I worked directly for my captain. I was basically like the radar O'Reilly. I was his secretary and followed him around and got yelled at all the time. But it helped me understand that even if I made mistakes, I could still continue to progress or make progress because, I made mistakes all the time. And in my captain's eyes, or at least that's what he told me on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And so I always wanted to fail forward. And the other piece is I love risk. I love challenges. I was a firefighter when I was in the Navy. I was a sniper when I was in the Navy. The firefighting thing on an ammunition ship is a huge risk and a huge responsibility. I actually ran firefighting teams, so I learned leadership very early on. And I just realized that I love risk. I love challenges. I love the unknown. And so since I embrace that so much, I think that allows me to continue to take risks. I mean, Kirk, you and I take risks. Hell, we took a huge risk 2 years ago when we merged, right? I mean, we started from zero real revenue because, you basically, stopped prospecting from the Tactic Brand side, and I totally stopped coaching and prospecting from the Top Advisor coaching side. And, both of us took huge steps back to take this big leap forward. And I personally, and I know you do too, think it was really worth it.
Yeah, we won't get into all the details, but it was definitely, there was a lot of stress around us getting this thing going. Mm-hmm. But we both believed in it, a lot. And, it's paying off so far. We're having a lot of fun. And I think we're building a community of people that are pretty dialed in. And that's I think probably one of the most fun parts to see making a difference. And so many people kind of buying into what you're trying to do, not just what you're selling, but what you're trying to do, right? So yeah, my childhood, it's funny because we didn't have like money. Mm-hmm. There were lots of years where it was pretty tight, and a couple, which was what it was like most of the time as a kid. But for some reason, we just lived in a place, in a community where there didn't seem to be a lot of pressure to be financially well off, because everybody was kind of seemed like the same. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does.
And it was just such an incredible area as a kid to grow up in, a small town in Nova Scotia, but still have access, close to the city and, good schools. And, but I think you learn. So I think gratitude probably has a big part, although I always feel like I can do better with gratitude.
Yeah.
I think that's just, you're human. Some people seem to really nailed it, but, mm-hmm. They're in monasteries and stuff like that.
Well, you found this really great article that had like 10 ways to continue to refine it, to build it, to focus on it, and to maintain your resilience. We've already touched on a couple of them, but the first one is, finding a sense of purpose in your life. I love the idea of what our vision is, here at Top Advisor Marketing, which is to help advisors get their voice out in the marketplace, right? That's and for me, it's not, we work in financial services, so therefore that's why that's our vision. But I like the idea of podcasting and what we do in general here as a company, because our job is to just help people be their own loud, right? To get their voice out into their specific place to share their wisdom and hopefully rise above the noise of some of the negative stuff that's out there. How do you feel about that? What do you think?
I mean, sense of purpose in life is, I mean, it's the human existence, right? I mean, everybody's got to find their why, and you have different whys. You have your why in your life, you have your why in your business, and sometimes they're congruent, and sometimes maybe they're a little bit different, I guess. But definitely, important part of being resilient is feeling like you've got that base. And you always know people that have that base, they just have such an advantage, right? Like I like to think that my childhood was such a great base, and I had some strong people around me that helped me, build that resilience when I was a kid. I don't always accept stress well. I'm not trying to pretend that I do, but I'm strong in other areas that help me get back on track, because I don't always handle stress well right out of the gate when something first happens, but I have some other areas where I'm really strong. And I think that's what probably people, when they're listening to this list of 10 things, we're marketing guys, right? And you've got a lot more depth than me in that regard, as far as your talents and your professional career and all your credentials. But for me, I'm a marketing guy and an entrepreneur, right? At work. And so why are we these guys talking about this? Because it comes up every day.
It does.
And there's things you can do every day to be better at it. And I think we all need to give ourselves some credit for being resilient, because if you're listening to this podcast, you've got all kinds of resilience. You probably can work on some areas. So when we go through this list of 10, just think about where you're strong, where you're really strong, where you're weak, and maybe it'll make a difference in your life or business. So that's why we're talking about this stuff, because we all live this stuff together, right? In our podcast, we want to be real with you guys from time to time, so you understand where we're coming from, what you can get better at. So sense of purpose, obviously huge.
Well, but I want to dial in a little bit more on the sense of purpose, because I talked about our professional sense of purpose here, at Top Advisor Marketing. But what is your personal sense of purpose? How do you, and are you comfortable sharing what that is with our audience?
My purpose is always to give. I like the idea of people living better lives, and I don't just mean wealthier lives, but just better lives, feeling more connected. Being able to pursue dreams. I mean, my own personal life, whether that's, doing good for my family, in my community, it's helping helping kids become better athletes, hockey players particularly, and all aspects of being a better athlete, like the mental side of it, the nutrition side of it, the working your tail off, when nobody's looking side of it, to being a good teammate, all those things. I'm a huge advocate for those things on a day-to-day basis with my connections to hockey in my community. And at work, I've always had an affinity for trying to help advisors have better businesses. In fact, I think maybe something that's held me back in a way sometimes is wanting to try to do more for advisors. Yeah. And we have to try to stick in our lanes as much as we can, so we can help them as much as we can, more in the areas that they need us and have hired us for. But I always have an affinity to try to do more for people. But you're always best to stay in your lane, I find, because that's where you can help them most, and then get other people to help them in other areas. But anyway.
Well, and for me, it's just, I want to be the best, husband, father, son, and brother that I can be. And it's the same thing, right? I want to pass on whatever I possibly can to my family, and therefore, you have that exponential growth. You raise good children. Hopefully, those children will either have their own children or raise friends that are going to be just that much better. But you just touched on number 2, which is kind of staying in your lane. Which the second one here is building a positive belief surrounding your abilities, and and I've said this many times on the podcast before. But Kirk, that's actually why I partnered with you. I partnered with you because you have a skill set I don't have, and I'm not saying I'll ever be able to absorb Kirk Lowe entirely, but just from the 2 years we've been working together, there's so much that I've had an opportunity to learn from you, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But I don't want to be you. I just want to be the best me I can, which has allowed me to figure out, what my true skill sets and abilities are, which are still to this day. I can't believe I get paid for it, but
yeah, I think advisors, this shows up a lot in practices, right? So we've talked before about the best business model. So my experience is the ensemble model, where people have different skills and they really work to those skills and stay in their lane, and then collectively the synergies of that creates a better business than they would have been able to create if they were trying to be more of those things or do more of those roles. So those can have that idea, build positive beliefs in your abilities, and then stick to those things. I've added something to that, but those can have really big influence on your business and in your life. I mean, finding a business partner who complements you is an example. It also, I'm going to stretch this a little bit into niche marketing, like finding your strength and then exploiting that based on how you market to people and who you market to. But that's a big one.
Yeah.
What's number 3?
Number 3 is developing a strong social network. I think I hear this from you a lot, that you have a very, very good core group of friends, and how they can help, like, you recharge your batteries. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's different levels of that social network. I'll give you a great example. Recently, a kid that plays hockey. He's same age as my youngest boy, and one of his teammates, his mom died of a stroke about a week and a bit ago, and just out of nowhere, 40-something years old, and really sad, really beautiful family, boy and a girl. Dad's a police officer, really nice man, really dedicated to sports, the community, wonderful people, like to have a lot of fun. Anyway, went to the funeral, and standing room only, just insane. And there were a ton of people from hockey. There were a ton of people from lacrosse, because they were big into lacrosse. People from school, people that had known them for their whole lives, because they both grew up in this community. And the network that they had was such a mass. Like he just couldn't stop talking about how utterly blown away with how many people showed up, how many people it was important to and cared. And that's how important resilience can be, right? When you come home from work and your family's there, or you can go hang out with friends, or maybe even you're hanging out with some colleagues, that being able to wind down and have the right people. And it's that's a huge thing. And the people that have those networks just seem to be able to, for the most part, bounce back, because they know they have so many people have their back, or so many people there to support them. So that's an obvious, huge one for resilience.
Yeah. Well, the next one's embracing change. And you and I seem to embrace change well, but there is an extreme on this too. There are some times where advisors specifically and business owners don't want change because they get comfortable, and then there's other advisors and business owners and entrepreneurs who try to force too much change. How have you found a balance of embracing change?
I'm not sure this one's very high up on my really good at list. Embracing change. I don't. It depends. If the change is, if you can see the positives of the change, then it's usually pretty easy. Change typically is a bunch more work. And you've got a lot of other things on the go, so sometimes that can add some stress. But if you can see all the good reasons to why the change, you can find the optimism in the change, it seems to go a lot easier. And I'm kind of hinting on what might be next.
Yeah.
I don't always do that on purpose. I'm not looking ahead on the list, but
well, it's natural. It's the flow, right? I mean, in order to do a lot of these things, you do need to be optimistic. You have to be able to find the positive, even in things that on the surface might not come across as being positive. Now, I am overly optimistic personally, sometimes to a fault, which I don't personally think it's a fault, but I've had other people in my life like, dude, there is darkness, Matt. You always are looking at the light. But for me, it's what I prefer. It's how I choose to live my life. I would rather be, looking at things in a positive light, not abandoning reality, but that's just kind of who I am.
Well, everybody knows you're positive because you start every podcast. You know, people, that's really you. Like, I wonder sometimes people think, man, how do you get that up and have so much energy? You're just a bit nutty like that, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a wonderful part of your character is just being in the moment in a podcast. And finding that energy, it takes a little bit more for me, as everybody probably knows. But especially when I have these headphones on, you made me go back to these headphones. It's kind of like you're in this little.
Yeah,
you
but
can
dude,
hear
you
yourself so
sound-
crispy, so you lose energy.
But you sound so good though now. It's awesome.
I know I sound better, but anyway. So embracing change is a big part of that. Is about having a plan to embrace it and then being optimistic that you handle it, which is number 5, being optimistic. And that stuff comes. If you're in business, it's a heck of a lot easier in life to be optimistic. You've got a constant, every day you're re-energized, right? That's one of the things that I've always found about myself is when I wake up in the morning, whatever happened yesterday is almost always gone. I rarely ever have bad day hangovers, right? Whether it's my kids, my relationship with my wife or my friends or anything, I just always feel ready to go the next day. I'm not saying I wake up, and feel the most energy in my body, but in my heart and my mind, I'm always ready to go.
Well, it's funny that you bring up the podcast energy. And honestly, Kirk, it's because I love this, man. When you're doing something that you truly love and are passionate about, being optimistic, positive beliefs, all of the things that we've talked about here, it just comes really, really naturally when you're expressing yourself in the way that you truly love. But the number 6, all right, so we just talked about finding a purpose, positive beliefs in your abilities, developing a strong social network, embracing change, and being optimistic. The 6th one here is nurturing yourself. And this is where almost everybody, in my opinion, falls flat on their face.
Boom. I just fell down. I fell flat.
Well, I mean, how are you with nurturing yourself?
I don't even know that I do. Let me think. I find the best way that I nurture myself in a way is keeping busy and having clear purposes in my downtime too. That always seems to work, but I don't know about nurturing. I don't know. I think there's generations coming that are better at that. I wonder if we'll end up being better in life because of that.
Well, I mean, there's been some.
Hopefully, I'm around to see that.
Yeah, I'm into that. Well, there have been some great studies about prioritization differences in millennials and Gen Z. This to me is the thing that I used to focus on a lot as a coach, and the thing that I got the most resistance on was the nurturing yourself. I am a huge fan of quiet, meditation. I personally think everybody in the world should take a nap every day. It's just a great way to refresh and recharge yourself and allow your brain to process everything that happened before you take a nap and afterwards. I think that's really important. I absolutely think exercise has changed my life repeatedly, whether for good or bad. Whether that's I stopped exercising and then my body starts, getting grumpy, or when I do start exercising, and just that magnificent feeling of taking care of this squishy temple that I get to live in for as long as I have the opportunity to live in it. But
squishy temple.
It is a squishy temple. Mine is squishy or less squishy at other times in my life. But you really do have to take care of yourself. This is the only self you have. Your batteries are not. They don't recharge themselves, so you have to recharge them. And finding something that you truly love. And Kirk, I know for you, a lot of times it's being at the hockey rink, seeing the kids get better. I mean that feeds your soul.
Yes, I mean that's not all I do in my life.
Well, sure.
We garden a lot and spend time with the kids. But I think when you see yourself as a resilient person, and I think most entrepreneurs have quite a bit of resilience. I think you think it's almost the opposite of nurturing yourself, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's like, I got this. Like I can handle this. I got this. I don't need to slow down. I'm resilient. I think they're kind of, they're the opposite in a way. I think one of them makes it more. But I know we're saying we're defining this as how do you build resilience? You nurture yourself because then you've got the energy and the resets to come back. But I think most people who consider themselves resilient might not think they need that.
That's right, and they're wrong.
Yeah, I'm fine to admit that
Yeah.
that I'm wrong and that there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs that are wrong. But I suspect that being strong in these other areas from a resilience perspective may mean that they do not value number 6.
Yeah, I absolutely
so value
agree.
number 6, everybody.
Yeah. Number 7 is develop your problem-solving skills. Now, how your brain works on this is really fascinating to me, and I'm not going to dive into my psychological analysis of you on this, but
Please don't.
yeah, I'm not going to. But I love how you solve problems, and it's very different than how I solve problems. And we don't need to get into the details on how each of us do it, but you have to have good problem solving skills. And it's something you have to practice. All of these are things that if you see yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 and you're not where you want to be on that scale, then you need to find ways to practice. I talk about that in the writing that I'm doing right now about listening. And I think one of the greatest ways to be a good problem solver and to be resilient and to be successful is to learn how to shut up, quiet your mind, and listen to what's happening on the other end. And I, of course, couch that in the world of podcasting because that's how you become a good podcast host. But it's wildly applicable outside of that. You can't be a good problem solver unless you're truly able to quiet yourself and listen and truly see what the reality of the problem is instead of what you think the problem could be.
I want to add to that because I think when I think about where I'm best able to problem solve is when I can remove myself from the emotional context of the decision, whether that's the burden of having to solve it or whether it's the burden of what the implications are if I don't solve it. So I find that when I remove myself, I can be much better at problem solving. Mm-hmm. Some really successful entrepreneurs have that ability, this opposable mind that they can get outside of the box. Box is probably not the right word, kind of overused, but as a problem solving. For me, it's when I try to, if I can remove myself from the burdens of solving it, that I think I can do a better job at it.
Yeah. Number 8 is establishing goals, and I have always had a different perspective on goal setting than a lot of the other coaches that I've worked with because I believe that in order to really focus on a goal, you have to have some sort of tangible reward system when it comes to goals, because more income is nebulous, feeling better, completing the project. None of those things remind you, because if you can surround yourself with reminders of your success, you are more likely to achieve success later down the road. You look at, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, there was a great meme going around with all of his, rings for championships. Now, I know he doesn't wear those all the time, but he wears them and he has them in places that are visible in order for him to maintain that level of motivation. I never shy away from when somebody says, hey, Matt, I want to make $1 million. Okay, well, that's great. Well, what's your reward? Well, Matt, the reward is $1 million. No, that's not the reward. That's the achievement of the goal. What is the reward? And I wish more people would put that level of tangibility on their results of achieving the goals, because again, it just, and I have it. I don't know if you do, Kirk, because you and I really haven't spent a lot of time on this, but I mean, I've got reminders all over my office of different points in my life where I was successful. I've got my first practice makeover from Investment News here, the first article I ever published in Horse's Mouth 10 years ago, a couple of other things. And when I'm feeling down, because that happens, right? We're all human. I look at this stuff and say, you know what, man, there's where I can pull some of my resilience when I don't have it just burning in my belly. Those things help me keep focused. Do you have stuff like that?
No, I'm really bad at that one. Nurturing myself and celebrating milestones, not great at it. Okay. I'm a head down,
grind
get it done. Yeah.
Okay, number 9.
So I'm not laying on a coach here, everybody. We're just being honest.
Well,
right?
Sure. Well, dude,
we didn't do this for self-therapy, whatever. We just thought, you know what? this is really interesting how each of our paths of resilience, how we might think of ourselves as resilient. And I don't know that advisors talk about this. And this is kind of really interesting timing, but I was just in New York visiting with one of our big clients, and somebody in the office wants to start a podcast on stress and mental health and things that nobody talks about in the financial industry. Mm-hmm. And I was just blown away by this person. Her name is Diana. How her why for doing it, how committed she is, and how excited she is to do this, and giving back to the industry. Really excited about it, and I hope it comes out not in the not too distant future, because I think there's a lot of advisors who could benefit from getting real with some people and not feeling like they're in a big room, like feeling they can do it on their own time and experience maybe what some other advisors are going through, maybe even contribute to the show or listen to some professionals who can give advice on, because we're all crazy busy. We're busier than other generations. We have way more stimulus to consume, and you got to understand that humans probably have a capacity for that, and we're maxed out. A lot of us are maxed out. Financial industry is can be an incredibly rewarding job, but it's extremely taxing. And why the heck not talk about this?
Well, and I want to kind of circle back around to what you just said there, because this isn't a Matt and Kirk therapy session. Of course, I'm the therapist and you're on the couch, but the idea here is you have to do this not only from a personal standpoint, but this is damn good marketing. All right, so let's get real with the business aspect of this. The greatest people who market themselves, especially their personal brand, they allow their clients and prospects to see inside, because that's where the connection hits. That's where you feel like you know somebody. And Kirk, this just happened with you when you were in New York, but a gentleman had said that he feels like he knows you already because he's listened to all of the podcasts, which still blows both of us away, which is great. And I've had that experience many times too. You have to let people in just a little bit. Now, you don't have to get weirdly uncomfortable and overshare, which we're not doing, and nor do we ever do on these podcasts, but you do need to let people in. You do need to allow people to get a glimpse of who you are as a human, because that's going to endear them to you more. There's going to be a deeper connection, and they're going to be more likely to refer you, because that's truly how you build trust.
Amen, brother.
Okay, we've got 2 more on this 10. Take action to solve problems, which most financial services professionals are really, really good at. How do you handle that risk, Kirk, that I'm going to make a decision, I'm not going to dwell on this, let's just go and see what happens? Where did that come from with you?
Yeah, I mean, we're all in a highly competitive, we're in highly competitive businesses. Financial services, so are we, marketing. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of marketing people, are there, in the world?
Not enough, as far as I'm concerned.
There's a lot. So you're constantly, aiming to get better. I was reading something the other day about the most successful people focus on making their clients as happy as possible, and not worrying about their competitors or competition they're doing. They're just so dialed in. I'm not really sure that it makes sense in a moment, mm-hmm. but I'm not sure it makes complete sense. But you always want to know it. I guess you want to know what your competitors are doing. But you obviously got to focus on both those things. But anyway, so taking action to solve problems. Man, I'm stumped on that one. I mean, it just seems so straightforward. Like if you've got something, if you don't solve it, then you're moving backwards pretty quick, and there's no room for that, and or the status quo, which I think some advisors are pretty happy with. Some of the 50+ advisors, not always, but I do hear that more. I just like to keep this thing running for another 5 years, sell it. And I'm not sure that's the best mindset. I think that's a huge bell going off that says bring in somebody with some more energy.
Yeah.
And we've got a client right now who's done that, and I think it's a wonderful thing for him because I want this kind of lifestyle, but I'm not interested in going crazy to grow it. Well, find somebody else who wants to go crazy to grow it, and you live your life, and you've got your succession plan in place. It's a wonderful option. I don't know how I went from take action to solve problems to that, but you know what?
Stream of consciousness, brother. Well, a lot of people that we do work with do get analysis paralysis, right? And so that's kind of where I wanted to go with the take action to solve problems. You can overanalyze, and sometimes you just need to do a gut check and make a decision. Now, the last one is the whole onus of this new thing that I'm writing, which is practice, right? You have to continuously work on your skills. That doesn't mean, everybody, that you keep going to all of these conferences. Really what that means is you should stop going to some conferences and start going to other group organizations and get out of just going to financial services conventions, because you're going to hear the same stuff over and over again, and that's not going to really break you out. The best thing that you can do, and there's an advisor in Minnesota who we just had her on this podcast. Her name is Brittany, and then he's going to be on another podcast that we do, which is the 99 Best Marketing Ideas. And he does that all the time. And that was one of the things I always loved about his name's Brian, is he would always get out of his comfort zone, and he would go to like these weird conferences and meet all of these new people because he just wanted a different perspective. And that allows you, I believe, to have a fresh look at what you need to work on, not just personally, but professionally. How do you, Kirk, practice marketing? How do you practice branding? How do you keep sharpening your skills on a regular basis to provide that great service for our clients?
I love judging marketing in other industries. And I remember as a teenager, I just was so engaged in giving feedback, whether it's in my own mind or whoever beside me, on anything I'd ever seen marketing wise. And what's funny is my 16-year-old, my oldest boy, when we watch TV together or we're out doing anything, he's just exactly the same way, except I think he's way ahead of me. He's a really bright kid, but and I think that's one of the ways I apply. I love marketing, so I kind of practice. I'm always practicing in life, and sales to a degree. You know, when you're somewhere and you experience how somebody else sells, I'm always, absorbing that. It's funny, a funny story. I was in New York and I asked the hotel shuttle if they could shuttle me to this restaurant that I was going to. And I said, no problem. I get in the car. The previous day I had a guy pick me up at the airport and shuttle, and he was in such a hurry. He was, going way too fast. He was way too aggressive a driver. He didn't look like he cared about his job at all. He didn't look but he cared about me because of how fast he was driving. And I was a little bit frustrated. I wasn't scared, but, and then the next day I get this other guy. He's older. He's really happy to have a job. You could tell and then the van broke down only like 200 meters or something from the hotel. I was like, oh my gosh. What I didn't realize is how close where I was going was. And he's like, so I end up just walking. I gave him a way bigger tip because how he handled the adversity. I'm way off on a tangent here, but his skills that were not expected, because his job was, just to graciously drive me there, but he was such a nice, warm person. He accepted everything. So he treated when he called his boss, the manager at the hotel, and they had a mechanic come out, he was so gracious about everything that it kept me really calm. And then he gave me, helped me solve what I needed to do, which was, hey, it's just right there. We can call somebody. And he said, but you're probably just as good off to walk and not wait for us. Anyway, and ended up giving him a bigger tip for driving me 150 meters or whatever it was.
All right.
I don't know what was my point there.
Well,
keep working on your skills.
Yeah. Well, part of that is mindset, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It's always nice when a friend bails you out and you miss the point, and they somehow find a way to get the point across.
Yeah. Again, I have no idea how I'm able to do, that's my weird, unique skill. It doesn't seem to be very transferable in other places.
I guess working on skills, like you said, there's so many different skills to work on.
Mm-hmm.
But the resilience that he had in that moment got him a bigger tip, because I was so grateful that he didn't flip out and make me more stressed out, because I was trying to make my lunch date, who was my drive to the airport. So,
all right, closing thoughts, Kirk, on finding your resilience. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that when you look at these 10 things, you're going to understand that you're, strong at, 3 to 5 of them, and you're weak at, 3 to 5 of them potentially, and try to find maybe it's a little more balance in your resilience, and then how that impacts your business and your quality of life and all those things. Hopefully we gave you some insights, not only into us, but us being honest about who we are, and you're comfortable with that, and you can be comfortable with, being, resilient in some areas and less resilient in the others, and finding ways to make up for that or get better at it, or at least, starting point is just acknowledge it. So hopefully by us sharing this with you, you've got something out of it. And another thing is to remember that when you're doing your own podcast, or when you're meeting with your clients, that being real, or showing weakness, or having conversations like that is not a bad thing. Most of the time, people love to know who you are because they're experiencing the same thing. I doubt there's going to be anybody that would ever read this and say, I'm strong in all 10 of those, baby. It's just not going to happen. If you are, you're probably not classified as human. Maybe you'd be a god or something like that. But hopefully this added something to your day, your life, your work.
Awesome. And if you really do think that you're great at all 10 of these, you're not being honest with yourself. Everybody has the ability to be more whatever, better at whatever. This is the old Bruce Lee quote. He talks about being like water, and not only making sure that you're fluid and flexible, but also that you always keep your glass half full, because when it is entirely full, then any new knowledge, any new opportunities are just going to run over the top. Well, if you have not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you click that subscribe now button below. That way, every time we come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And if you know somebody who really does need to have a resilience check-in, check-up, or just a reminder, please make sure that you share this by clicking that share button below. If you want to know more about what we do at Top Advisor Marketing, just go ahead and email me, Matt, at topadvisorm, that M is for marketing.com, or you can just check us out and fill out the Contact Us form on our website. If you have not started your own podcast, you need to understand that the wave is happening right now, and it's really, really good to be on top of that wave or in front of that wave, but it's not good to be behind the wave. So if you want to know more about that, just give us a holler. And for everybody at Top Advisor Marketing, including Kirk Lowe, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Are you ready to change the way you communicate with your clients? Are you tired of being the best-kept secret in your area? Learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your business. Contact us today and see what the power of podcasting can do for your business. Click on the Contact Us link on our website at topadvisormarketing.com and set up a call to learn more. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook for more updates and information.
This was brought to you by Iris.xyz, a platform helping financial professionals become better in business and life through new media and new voices. Visit them and learn more at iris.xyz.